What do you do when the person who controls your land's fate is a tyrant in a floral dress? For me, it started with a single, impossible demand from HOA Karen, the HOA president who seemed to have a personal vendetta against my family's ranch. My name is Caleb Holt, and the 2,000 acres of sun-baked Texas soil I call home have been in my family for 3 generations. The land is more than dirt, it's my father's sweat, my grandfather's dreams, and my promise to keep it alive. But that promise was tested when Karen, with her clipboard and her sneer, decided my ranch's broken irrigation system wasn't her problem. The pipes were leaking, the crops were dying, and the HOA's rules I never agreed to, strangling my livelihood. I begged for permission to repair the system, to dig up the main water line that ran through HOA-controlled land. Karen's response: a flat, venomous no. Her reasoning: the repairs would disrupt the aesthetic harmony of the community. Aesthetic harmony on a ranch where the only neighbors are tumbleweeds and coyotes. I stood there, staring at her, the woman who held my future in her manicured hands, and felt something snap inside me. This wasn't just about water. It was about power. And I was done playing her game. The trouble started 6 months ago, when a pipe burst deep in the earth, flooding half my barley field before I even noticed. I traced the problem to the main irrigation line, a beast of a system that fed not just my ranch, but the entire 2,000-acre HOA territory. The line was old, rusted, and buried partially on land the HOA claimed as common ground. To fix it, I needed their approval. I went to Karen, hat in hand, explaining the stakes: no water, no crops, no ranch. She listened, her eyes cold as a snake's, and promised to review the matter. Weeks passed. My fields turned to dust. My cattle grew gaunt. I sent emails, made calls, even showed up at her pristine suburban doorstep with mud on my boots. Each time, she brushed me off, citing bylaws I'd never seen, claiming my repairs would set a precedent. I was losing everything, and she didn't care. My wife, Sarah, saw the toll it was taking. "Caleb," she said one night, her voice soft but firm, "you can't let her win. This is our home." I nodded, but inside, I was drowning in rage and helplessness. Then came the day I fought back. I'd heard whispers from other ranchers Karen wasn't just denying me. She was flexing her power, punishing anyone who didn't bow to her. I dug into the HOA's records, late nights poring over dusty files in the county office. What I found was a bombshell. The HOA's claim to the common ground was shaky at best. A century-old deed showed my family still held partial rights to the land where the water line ran. Karen didn't know I knew. I didn't tell her. Instead, I started planning. If she wouldn't let me fix the pipes, I'd make sure she felt the consequences of her own rules. The water line had a master valve, hidden in a rusted shed on my property. One turn, and I could cut off water to the entire HOA territory, every manicured lawn, every sparkling pool, every acre of their precious community. It was a desperate move, but desperation was all I had left. The morning I decided to act, the air was thick with heat. I stood by the valve, wrench in hand, my heart pounding. Sarah was at my side, her hand on my arm. "You sure about this, Caleb?" she asked. I wasn't. But I was sure about one thing: Karen had underestimated me. I turned the valve. The pipes groaned, then fell silent. The water stopped. By noon, the HOA's phone lines were burning up. Karen's pristine neighborhood, with its perfect green lawns, was suddenly parched. I didn't know it then, but I just lit the fuse on a confrontation that would shake the entire community. The showdown came faster than I expected. By late afternoon, Karen was at my gate, flanked by two nervous HOA board members, their ties flapping in the wind. She was a force of nature, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You think you can hold this community hostage? Hold." She spat, her face red with fury. "Turn that water back on, or I'll have you sued into oblivion." I stood my ground, the valve wrench still in my hand, the weight of my decision heavy in my chest. "You blocked my repairs," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You left me no choice." The air crackled with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle. The board members shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between us. Karen stepped closer, her bulk imposing, her eyes burning with contempt. "You're nothing but a dirty rancher," she hissed. "You don't belong here." That's when I saw a crack in her armor. Her words weren't just about me. They were about her need to control, to dominate, to prove she was untouchable. But then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. One of the board members, a quiet man named Tom, spoke up. "Karen," he said, his voice trembling. "He's right. You've been blocking everyone. I've seen the complaints. You're not just hurting him, you're hurting all of us." The air shifted. Karen's face froze, her confidence faltering for the first time. Tom turned to me, his eyes weary but resolute. "I've got a farm too, Caleb. My crops are dying, same as yours." She told me it was my fault for not maintaining standards. I'm done with her games. It was a betrayal she hadn't expected, a crack in her empire. I realized then that Karen's power wasn't absolute. She'd built it on fear, and fear was starting to crumble. The standoff stretched into the evening, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the dry earth. Karen's bravado was slipping, but she wasn't done. She jabbed a finger at Tom, her voice a low growl. "You're siding with him. After everything I've done for this community." Tom didn't flinch. "You've done nothing but bully us," he said. "I'm not the only one who's tired of it." The other board member, a wiry woman named Ellen, nodded faintly, her clipboard trembling in her hands. I could see it now. Karen's reign was unraveling, and she knew it. But she wasn't going down without a fight. She turned to me, her eyes blazing. "You think you've won? I'll drag you through every court in Texas. You'll lose everything." I didn't blink. "You already took everything," I said. "My crops, my cattle, my family's legacy. What's left to lose?" The truth hung heavy between us, a truth she couldn't deny. That night, word spread like wildfire. Ranchers, farmers, even suburban homeowners started calling, their anger turning from me to Karen. The water shutoff had exposed her petty rules, her vindictive control, her refusal to listen. By morning, a crowd had gathered at the HOA office, demanding answers. Karen tried to spin it, claiming I was the villain, but the evidence was undeniable. Tom and Ellen, emboldened by the growing support, brought forward the complaints they'd buried under Karen's orders: blocked permits, ignored repairs, families pushed to the brink. My deed discovery became the final nail in her coffin. The HOA's claim to the waterline land was invalid, and Karen had known it all along. She'd lied to keep her power, to keep us all under her thumb. Her collapse was swift and brutal. At the next HOA meeting, The room was packed, the air thick with resentment. Karen stood at the podium, her usual swagger gone, replaced by a nervous stammer. "I was only protecting our community," she said, but the crowd wasn't buying it. One by one, people stood up, ranchers like me, families from the suburbs, even her own board members. They recounted her abuses, her threats, her refusal to compromise. Tom presented my deed, and the room erupted. Karen's face drained of color as the vote came. She was out. Stripped of her title, her authority, her control. She left the meeting in silence, her floral dress a sad contrast to the defeated slump of her shoulders. The HOA rewrote its bylaws that night, prioritizing fairness over aesthetics, cooperation over control. My repairs were approved within hours. As the water flowed again, my fields began to recover, green shoots breaking through the cracked earth. But it wasn't just the land that healed. The community did too. Ranchers and homeowners started talking, sharing resources, rebuilding what Karen had torn apart. Sarah and I walked the fields one evening, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. "You did it," she said, squeezing my hand. "You stood up to her." I shook my head. "We did it. All of us." I thought about Tom, about Ellen, about the others who'd found their voices. Karen's tyranny had united us, not just against her, but for something bigger, a community that valued each other, not just rules. Looking back, I don't regret turning that valve. It wasn't just about water. It was about fighting for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. Karen thought she could break me, but she didn't know the strength of a man with nothing left to lose or the power of a community that refuses to stay silent. My ranch is thriving now. But more than that, it's a reminder, sometimes, you have to take a stand, even if it means shaking the ground beneath everyone's feet. The water flows, the crops grow, and the legacy lives on. And that's a victory worth fighting for.